Hey everyone, welcome back to the Gen Z show. We've got an awesome episode for you today. By the way, my name is Jamie, and we're going to talk about a super important topic for our career, which is, feedback. The kind of feedback that really helps you grow and get better at what you do. So, let me ask you this. Have you ever felt stuck in your job, not knowing how to improve or what you're doing wrong? Or maybe you've gotten feedback that's so vague, it just leaves you scratching your head. And if you're a manager, do you sometimes struggle to give feedback that actually helps your team get better? Well, I know we've been there, right? Today, our episode is going to be super helpful. We're going to chat about how to ask feedback in a way that gets you real, useful advice. And we'll also cover how to avoid those common mistakes we all make when getting feedback and how to use it to figure out your strengths and weaknesses. Plus, we'll talk about setting and hitting your career goals with the help of feedback and how leaders can create a culture where feedback is seen as a positive thing. To help us navigate all this topic, we have a fantastic guest with us. He has more than 17 years of experience in human resources and corporate culture, having, worked with several industries like consumer goods, hospitality, e-commerce, engineering, IT, and BPO. Spent most of his career in the Philippines, but also had opportunities to take leadership roles in various countries in Asia, like Malaysia, Japan, Indonesia, and Hong Kong. Currently, the People and Culture Director of JTI Myanmar, a subsidiary of Japan Tobacco International. Please welcome Mr. Danjie Reyes. Hi, Sir Danjie.
Hello, Jamie. Hello. How are you?
Good. By the way, Sir Danj, thank you so much for joining our episode for today. Now, I would like to ask the first question. No, why do you think
Oh.
it's feedback important for career growth?
Well, it's important not only for career growth, no, but also in so many things, no, in an employee or in a career life cycle, right? So, feedback is very very important because it keeps you updated with what the expectations are from you, and it also gives you the chance, no, to grow and improve yourself. No? It's also very important, especially now with this generation, where we've noticed that the workforce at the moment has changed, has significantly changed. This generation, since we have easy access to a lot of media content at a swipe of our finger using our mobile phone. So everything's very accessible at an instant. And in fact, the social media has created a feedback culture. No, when you get a lot of likes, you get a lot of reactions on your posts.
Right, right.
Those are feedback. No, and this generation has gotten used to it. No, so as leaders of the organizations, we've really learned that this generation really responds to feedback because that's basically their current environment, and we have to respect that.
Right. And I am curious as well, Sir Dansh, how can you differentiate? Because a lot of people are getting confused when it comes to differentiating the constructive feedback from criticism. So can you tell us the difference between those two?
Okay, the basic difference between a criticism and a feedback is that a criticism refers to the person, right? While constructive feedback refers to specific incidents, no, or evidences that something has happened, and either it was a good thing or a bad thing that it happened. So the line between criticism and feedback is really who is the or what's the subject of the statement being given, right? If the subject is the person, and it has become a feedback has become a personal attack, then it's not constructive at all. It really becomes criticism to a large extent. But if the feedback or the content of what you relay to your team member is something that pertains to specific incidents, to specific situations, or how did that person manage a specific situation, that itself is constructive criticism. No? It's constructive because the intention is not to demean, to shame, or to discriminate a person.
Right.
It's constructive because it's really meant to help the person grow and help the person improve and develop his or her career moving forward.
Right. And I'm not sure if I'm the only one who love getting feedback from other people, but it's not everyone's cup of tea, Sir Danj. So, what do you think are the challenges in receiving feedback, and how can people, especially those people who are watching right now, how can they overcome it?
Well, especially if it's negative feedback, it's human nature, right? When you hear something not good about what you did or what you've done, no, the normal tendency is for you to either be in denial or push back the feedback itself, right? So we're actually wired to reject these types of comments that we receive, especially if we think or we feel that we did put in a lot of work on a specific output and yet we get negative feedback in that regard. So my advice is really to, number one, keep an open mind, because you always have to appreciate feedback as if it's, I would say, a blessing. You have to think that the other person giving feedback only has good intentions, right? And if you're coming from that point of view, it will be easier for you to take feedback. No? So and in fact, no, the next level is actually for you to solicit feedback. No? So if you were able to overcome the feeling of rejecting feedback, no, if you're able to overcome that, then the next step is for you to actually invite or solicit feedback. No? If your perspective is that feedback is something that will help you grow as an individual, it becomes easier for you to take in whatever feedback you get from people. No? So it's really keeping an open mind, always assuming that everyone or all people who would like to give you the feedback has good intentions.
Right. That's a very good point, Sir Danj. And my next question would be specifically for those who gives feedback. What are the key tips for giving effective feedback? If you're a manager or a leader, how do you give feedback effectively without hurting your team's feelings? Because that's the reason why people don't parang they're kind of afraid of improving themselves.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, before you move to a culture of feedback, there's a prerequisite, right? So the prerequisite is, as a leader, you need to make sure that you create a safe space. Okay, when I say safe space, we're not only talking about physical safety; we're also talking about psychological safety. No? So a few years back, the concept of psychological safety has been introduced. No, it's basically allowing or creating an environment where people can actually speak up without the fear of being judged or being reprimanded or basically encountering certain repercussions because of speaking up. No, so I think it's a very very important prerequisite because it's a culture of feedback that you're trying to create. No, and in order for you to be successful in creating such culture, you need to ensure that your team has that kind of speaking up culture. No, so the funny thing is, we as Filipinos, especially, we were trained even as children not to speak up. Right? That's how strange our culture is. No, I'll give you an example. If we eat as a family over dinner and our parents start talking, no, I don't know if this still happens now, but it happened to me when I was young. When parents were talking or when the adults were talking, you can't just speak up and say your mind and give them a piece of your thought on whatever they're discussing about. No, their tendency is to scold you. Hey, you don't have to talk when the adults are talking, right? You just keep quiet and eat your food, right? Because of that kind of culture, we Filipinos didn't get the chance to speak up right? Especially when authorities are, when speak, we tend to hold ourselves back, no? And it's really something that's well ingrained in our, not just in our culture but also in our psyche, no? So the tendency typically for us is we don't necessarily talk. And it goes the same also for leaders. They are so afraid of hurting feelings. They're so afraid of pushback. It becomes an impediment. It becomes a challenge for creating that kind of feedback culture. No? So, to a large extent, I think leaders have to create that culture first. You can encourage feedback from your team, and from there you can already begin building that kind of culture where you can receive feedback and also give the same, no? So as I always say, you cannot give what you do not have, no? So you start first by allowing yourself to receive feedback before you are able to give away feedback as well. So it really boils down to that prerequisite of creating a psychologically safe environment before you're able to give or receive feedback. I think that's very, very important.
And so, Dan, we've been talking about the effectivity of feedback. Now, I want to know as well, how can feedback help identify strengths and areas of improvement?
Okay. Well, for me, it's the easiest way, no, to highlight strengths and opportunities for improvement. I don't want to call it weakness, no, because I'm a firm believer of capitalizing on your strengths and actually disregarding weaknesses. Okay. I think any kind of feedback should focus on the individual strengths and opportunities. No, that's why you talk about a specific situation, not the person. No, because when you talk about the person, that's when you get to highlight certain behaviors or certain. You have that pitfall of giving away feedback that might hurt the other person because you're already attacking the person, no? So to me, I think feedback is the easiest way, no, to build on strengths, but just to highlight that any feedback should really capitalize on the strength of the individual and not the weaknesses, no? Again, we're not here to criticize, we're here to give constructive feedback that will help the person grow and develop.
Right. And actually, you've mentioned as well, Sir Danj, about opportunities. It's another way on how you adapt on new learnings as well. So, how does feedback promote continuous learning in an organization?
Well, there are several ways, but the top of mind thing I could think of about feedback and learning, because feedback helps you validate, no? Helps you validate if people have learned a certain set of behavior, a certain mindset. I think a culture of feedback helps you realize whether learning interventions have indeed become effective. You can either see this from the quality of feedback being given, or you can actually see this from, let's say, the volume, in fact, of feedback being given. So, from a learning and development standpoint, feedback can actually be, or receiving feedback can actually be a very good barometer to determine effectiveness of learning interventions.
I'm curious, Sir Danj, can you share maybe an example of feedback positively impacting someone else's career?
Well, I can only talk of my own, no? I think if there's one thing that people, at least my former colleagues, my former bosses, would really always highlight, it's the fact that I have been very receptive to feedback. And being receptive to feedback allowed me to become more humble, you know. It has allowed me to become more critical about myself. It has allowed me to become more aware of what I can do and what I cannot do, what I can deliver and what I cannot deliver. People really appreciate that, no? And to me, that really helped me propel my career, and it has really helped me become, I would say, aggressive, no, in my field. It's really because of feedback, no? And as they say, people learn not by just attending formal classes or attending training or workshops. A good portion of learning comes from other people, no? And that's basically feedback. An old concept in learning, we call it 70-20-10. 70% of how people learn is actually learning from experience.
Right. Mm.
Okay. 10% is learning from these classes, formal training, etc. The 20%, no, which is also a significant part, which is twice as much effective as that of a classroom training, is actually learning from others. A lot of companies have actually established systems that will allow people to give and receive feedback. No? So you would usually see this in evolving performance management systems, etc. So that aside from encouraging a culture of feedback, it also allows people to ensure that they actually learn and develop from receiving and giving feedback.
Right. And a lot of people are afraid of asking or receiving feedback because it might give them negative feelings. So, on behalf of people, Sir Dan, who are watching right now, I want to ask, how should you handle negative feedback without feeling discouraged?
Going back to what I was saying earlier, think of it as something that will help you grow and develop as an individual. Second is that assume good intent. Whoever is giving that feedback, that person must be after your career, your growth. No, so if the person feels that the feedback being given is about a specific situation, then he or she needs to be grateful. No? But if the person feels, which is the flip side, that it's already an attack to him or her as a person, then that's the time that he or she should give the feedback back, no? And tell that person that this is something that I feel that is hurting me, that I think is already a personal attack, and call it out, because I think if the leader really wants to create a more inclusive, a more psychologically safe environment, then that leader must be prepared to receive feedback as well, no? And calling it out while the iron is hot is obviously a very good opportunity to do that at that point. No, but if you don't have the strength to do it, maybe after the session you can give the feedback. But if you feel that you're being attacked as a person, meaning that person might say that you're lazy, you're always making excuses, you're stubborn. I mean, these are all personal attacks, no, which can be disguised as feedback. No? So, I think the person receiving the feedback also has the right to give feedback to the person giving feedback. I hope I'm making myself clear, and take
Yes.
that as an opportunity to give feedback to that person, because that person may not also be aware that he's not doing it right.
Well, I will relate your answer to the next question. For the leaders right now who are watching, what can leaders do to create a feedback friendly environment?
So for me, it takes a lot of conscious effort to do that. No, again, as human nature dictates that people are so not used to feedback. It's not part of our natural selves. So that has to be taken into account. And basically, feedback takes a lot of courage, either giving or receiving. And the thing about courage is that courage cannot be taught. No, you cannot teach someone courage, right? It has to be created through the environment. No, you need, as a leader, you have to create an environment where a culture of feedback will thrive. And I did mention earlier the prerequisite. No, you need to ensure as a prerequisite that you create a safe space, psychologically safe environment before bringing a culture of feedback next. That's super important.
That's a very good insight, Sir Danj. Now we're down to our last question. I know you've said or you've shared a lot of tips all throughout this interview, but I want to ask as well, what advice do you have for someone afraid of seeking feedback?
Well, for one, I think if you're afraid to seek feedback, no, I have no personally, I have no control over how you feel, no. But I think, in my experience, if you are afraid to seek feedback, no, then you don't have to take it. You don't have to take it in such a way that it will be too heavy for you. You can take baby steps to get there. You can start by soliciting feedback anonymously, or you can probably just allow yourself some time to receive bits and pieces of comments, because it takes courage to receive feedback, and courage can never be taught. So going back to that principle, I think you just have to start with bits and pieces of feedback that maybe you can read from someone. Doesn't necessarily have to be coming from a one-on-one conversation. Could be getting feedback from a very close friend where you feel safe, and so many other ways, no? But you don't really have to force yourself outright to be ready for to take in feedback. No, just start small, and then gradually you will realize that it has become part of your DNA. And a lot of people have been very successful with feedback. So I guess if you are very eager to grow and develop, then you need to accept the fact that feedback is really a huge part of how we grow as individuals.
Right. Wow, that's a very insightful conversation, Sir Danj. I know all of those people who are watching right now found our discussion on the power of feedback as very enlightening and practical as I did. Thank you so much, Sir Danj, for sharing your
Thank you.
expertise. Um, this is a very helpful topic for everyone who's watching right now. It's clear that, feedback, when done right, can be truly a catalyst for professional growth and development. So thank you again, Sir Danj, for your time. And
Thank you.
thank you so much. And remember, guys, for those who are watching, whether you're just starting out in your career or you're a seasoned professional, embracing feedback can help you identify your strengths, work on your weaknesses, and ultimately achieve your career goals. So if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to the Gen Z Show and give us a thumbs up. Share this episode with your friends and colleagues who might benefit from it too. So again, stay tuned for more episodes where we bring you the best tips and insights to help you succeed in your career and personal development. This is Jamie once again. Thanks for listening. And until next time, keep growing and keep shining. See you soon, guys. Thank you, Sir Danj.